There's strategy group members, councillors and also members of the public. Welcome to the strategy group meeting. I first want to just sign off the meeting minutes held on the 16th of November 2017. Are you happy for me to do so?
Yeah.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. Have apologies from Madam Chancellor. Are there any more apologies?
Sean Thomas, Chairman.
Sean Thomas, thank you. Declarations of members' interests?
No.
If not, declare at the time you come to the meeting. We cannot declare them now. I want to just change the agenda slightly, if you may, because Councillor Gilbert's not feeling too good. So I was going to ask if the environment issues could go first. So Councillor Gilbert has an opportunity to go early if she needs to. There's a lot, as we know, a lot of folks around the moment. Is everyone happy with that? Should we go do that first? Yeah. Okay, Joe, so over to you.
Okay. Well, it's right at the very end.
It's item 8. Yeah.
It's 2 pages, a very short report.
Yeah.
And it's to seek approval for the waiver of the requirement for a detailed scheme approval for the purchase of waste containers. Now this is for the new 123 service in June. Can you hear me okay? Because I now got a turkey voice.
I can hear you.
Okay. We need to purchase 37,000 containers or around there, and that means it's a capital asset. It falls into financial regulation 4.6. Now, a bin's a bin. We know what the surface is. We know what the type of bin we want. There's minimal choices to be made. So what we're asking for is exclusion of the financial regulation 4.6 in order to purchase the bins.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gilbert. Any questions, any comments? Are you happy to agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Doesn't mean you have to go now, though.
No. Hang down.
Move on to the first corporate issue, Daventry District Community Strategy, Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will have noted that this is a refreshed document. The community strategy must come back again to strategy after consultation with the People's Panel and discussion with Daventry District Health and Wellbeing Forum. Division had been agreed, and the LSP has agreed that these two priorities. However, the priority to working with vulnerable older people is considered to be necessary to be more inclusive, and it would be better changed to working with vulnerable adults, and that gives more scope. Members may have seen the comment on equality on page 19, which is quite interesting. Also, the revised terms of reference for the LSP are attached. Originally, there were 3 subgroups, but now only the Health and Wellbeing Forum remains. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Griffin. Any comments or questions? Councillor Randall.
Yeah, there's only one comment that you read all of this and it all sounds very nice, but I never actually know how they reach their goals. Like every child is safe and has the best start in life. I don't actually know how they ever reach that goal or how they go about setting that goal, because I mean there's a lot of children in this district now that aren't safe, and a lot of vulnerable young children. I hear in the schools all the time how much welfare work they're doing. I hear from the PCSOs how much welfare work that they're doing. So I just think, well, actually, how do we ever go about achieving that? So it is a priority, how do we achieve it?
I think the point of Councillor Randall is to have an aspiration to achieve it. I think you're right. In the real world, there's always sort of challenges and difficulties to overcome. But I think the point is you have to have that aspiration to start with. If you start from a low base, you will not even achieve that level. I think they're doing their best. As you say, there's a lot of challenges out there. Councillor, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. When we discussed this on the last occasion, I thought we had brought this, there was no mention of mental health issues and related topics. I see that is still not there, which disappoints me. The other more general question that I have, if we decided not to pass this, what difference would it make? How would services be affected?
Well, I think the point is it's about the message you're giving to the residents you represent. So if you're actually saying you're not really bothered about that, then you just don't put a message forward. I think the point we're trying is a bit like Councillor Randall's point, the world's not perfect. You're trying to aspire to make sure you do the best you can. So I think not putting the message out would be a very poor thing to the residents out there who expect us to represent them and do our best for them, notwithstanding the major difficulties there are. And this is only a strategy, I appreciate that. It's a joined-up strategy with other partners. I'm not to be part of that partnership, I think it's yes, Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Chairman. I do think it's important that the partnerships that we have with the local strategic partnership, they need to have some direction, health and wellbeing forum, and this does help, and it works with the corporate, our own corporate strategy. Those partnerships can be very beneficial, and they do share information, and it just helps to give direction.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin. It is a partnership, part of the council on its own. And Councillor Organ.
Yeah, it was the same point really. I was visiting a school today and we were talking about the issue of inclusion and preventing truancy and exclusion, because of course they are some of the major trigger factors in young offending. And I looked at their policy and there was no real strategic aim or a destination for them to go. And what is important is that everybody should know where we are trying to get to. And I think these strategy documents, you know, they may be to a lot of people just words on a piece of paper, but for others and organisations in the public, I think it gives that trust and confidence that there is a direction of travel, there is an aspirational goal which is very, very difficult to achieve, and it is the sort of thing that we should have in all our documents. We need to know where we're trying to get to if we're ever going to get there.
Thank you, Councillor Organ. Councillor Griffin?
Yes, I would ask members to glance at page 28, because it gives you some idea of the strength and the way that the local strategic partnership works, because you'll see there a list of all the partners and the sort of ground that between them they cover and the sort of information they like to talk about in their meetings and share and help each other achieve, all these things that we set out to achieve.
Absolutely right, Councillor Griffin. Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Pleased to announce, fingers crossed, that CAB will get a lottery grant on the very subject that Councillor Ritchie has spoken about, an incorporated part of the LSP and the Mind and various other organisations looking at how to help it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that contribution, Councillor Paul. Councillor Hills?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to echo the comments made by Councillor Griffin and Councillor Organ. I sit on the Health and Wellbeing Forum, and this in turn feeds through to the LSP. Now, there's other agencies that are concerned in this, not just the District Council, but I think it's right that we have some aims and outcomes that we would wish to see from this. They are there as a guide, and they are discussed at meetings, and they are discussed when it's fed through to the LSP. So I recommend this and support this report, because I think it does give us something that we can aim for.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Hills. Are we happy to accept the recommendation?
Very good.
Thank you. Moving on to the second item, strategic risk register. Tony Joe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's the annual review of the strategic risk register that we have before us. I think probably the easiest way to explain this is that members go to the coloured documents, which are about page 43. And essentially, we've been through and reviewed each of the strategic risks, the consequences, mitigations, and reassess the risk ratings. The chart looks a little bit messy in that the changes are shown as track changes, but that's there to illustrate what actually has changed through the process. So we started the process through the Officers' Risk Management Working Group, which receives risk input from other working groups, primarily the Resources Working Group and the ICT Steering Group, and also feedback from service plans or services registers. So that's taken into account as well as looking at the strategic risks themselves. So you'll see in strategic risk 3, we've added to the risk description the words for demographic change, which is really to reflect the changing age profile of our population and demands on the services. And the other risk, risk number 9, we've added in and appeals to the investigation and legal challenge. Again, this is to reflect not just planning appeals, but other appeals and challenges to our actions and the services delivered. Other than that, there's been a number of changes to, as I mentioned earlier, to the consequences and some additional mitigations added in, and then a reassessment of the risk ratings. The strategic risk register was presented to Corporate Governance Committee, really as part of a risk management progress report rather than for them to review the risk register itself. But one comment came from that group was that the Corporate Governance Committee would like to see us specifically link the resources, each portfolio holder under the portfolio linked column, so which is the far right-hand column on the register. So, for example, in the first one, instead of just saying resources, I would say resources portfolio holder. Just so that gives some more specific link to the others.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Just on that point, committee, are you happy to agree just put the portfolio holder pointing on the right-hand column? There's just for clarity purposes. I think we all know it's the same, but obviously it's slightly clarity. Okay. Any questions, comments? If not, can we agree the recommendation? Thank you. Now move on to resources issues. The first one's programme of asset disposal. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll read out the recommendation first of all, so that the authority be granted. 1 for the disposal of land identified in table 1 in the report for 12 months from the day of the council meeting, and 2 for the disposal of the cadet centre below market value as set out in section 4.3 of the report. I'll very quickly draw members' attention to a couple of items on the tables. You'll be familiar with many of these, of course, but I think the ones that are most actually very interesting are, of course, the Catesby Tunnel, which we've spoken about on a number of occasions. Whilst I'm not chair of scrutiny anymore, it's useful to note that we did have a presentation at scrutiny the other evening, which had Councillor Brown, where Semler actually presented.
That's right.
Yeah. And that was one of the things, of course, they were very excited about, and they spoke about the impact positively it will have on the area in terms of development, etc. So that's worth noting.
And high value net jobs as well, net high value jobs.
Absolutely. So there's a whole exciting range of spin-offs attached to that, of course, that particular resource. And really, with respect to that one, it's really in terms of the actual income is around the grant of the leasehold, and of course the actual property itself essentially is, how can I, well, it's actually in the pair, but it's historic railways estate, and it's we basically get to grant the leasehold. Okay, it's pretty clear anyway, but I wanted to point that out as well. And the next very important one is around the cadet centre. So back in 2007, we acquired this for 341,000, and because of the development since, etc., this has now been possible to actually sell them that back, but actually after evaluation, it was market value of 550,000. It's not reasonable necessarily to sell it back to them at 550,000. Now it's no longer required. So the recommendation is that we offer it to them the actual 341,000, which is what they originally had. They're the ones I wanted to bring your attention to, and they're the ones in the recommendations. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody who's read the report. There's no other particular issues to raise, but of course happy to.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Happy to second it. I think we do second it in this meeting. I'll pick up on one item that Councillor Morgan referred to, and that is SEMLEP. I personally am very grateful to the assistance of SEMLEP in Daventry district. They have paid us an excellent service, whether it be with schools, whether it be with the Catesby Tunnel or other projects. We have done exceptionally well out of SEMLEP, and I would just like to point that out. Apart from that, I approve of the recommendations shown.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Paul. I would endorse that as a Senate board member anyway. I would say Catesby Tunnel actually, interesting, is one of the highest ranked ones out of the whole of the South East Midlands area in the bidding process. And it's a unique facility, as we know, it's the only one in the world of its kind. So that's great news. Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Gilbert.
I've just realised there's number 9, the freehold disposal of 32 residential properties. Just this guidance has been on the T-Deco board. Should I?
T-Deco board, is that Councillor Brown as well, Councillor Ritchie? It's on the same point?
No, but
sorry.
On the same point.
Same point for Councillor Ritchie. So you're declaring that's an interest?
I think.
Oh, no, sorry, no, I don't understand that you're declaring it as an interest. I didn't quite hear you.
No, I'm declaring it as an interest because I'm on the T-Deco board.
board, sorry, that's what Okay, so that's noted. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Brown.
yeah, no interest to declare, but
Okay.
just a question on the cadet centre.
Yes.
With the solicitors for the cadet organisation having held the 341,000 since 2007, are we aware whether they've invested that money, whether they've made profit? Because effectively we're now, as a council, at risk of feeling the pain of 11 years of depreciation on that £341,000 as it was in 2007.
Will you answer that question, Councillor Paul?
I'm happy to answer it, but I think Simon Bowers would be more professional in his answer.
It's just because you waved your hand around. Councillor Bowers.
Chairman, I will be certain that the solicitors for the organisation will put the money on deposit that would have benefited from the interest for the last 11 years. They would have done rather than the debt organisation, it would appear. So the solicitors will have made some money from it, there is no doubt about that. But we don't feel that's a sufficient reason to justify suggesting a different price.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown. Councillor Ritchie.
Yes, I wanted just to say a bit about number 9, the disposal of the T-Deco properties.
Oh, yes.
I'm grateful to the officers for sending the ward councillors an email letting us know that they were contacting tenants. I wasn't too impressed about getting an email that was sent at 16:45 one afternoon saying that first-class letters were in the post. I would have thought it would have been a little bit better if at least ward councillors had been notified beforehand, so that if there were any issues that ward councillors wanted to make, there was an opportunity to do so. Instead, I feel that if we had wanted to make any suggestions, we had been preempted. This is an issue in which I have looked, and as we would have expected, our officers have acted entirely properly in terms of following the legislation, what is in the tenancy agreements. I don't think there is any question about that, and I'm quite sure that nobody is going to make a challenge over that. Where I think there is a difficulty with this particular disposal, and I'm not arguing that the council should not go ahead in seeking to dispose of these properties, but where there is an issue, it's around the way in which they were actually marketed to tenants originally. I'm told that lifetime homes means they are homes that are built so that when we reach the stage that we need a wheelchair or a stair lift, then yes, the stairs are broad enough and the doors are broad enough to accommodate all of these sorts of things. But I have heard numerous tales from tenants about the way that they were persuaded to move to these properties as something that they could stay in for a lifetime. It wasn't just theoretical that when somebody came along needing a wheelchair they could fit it. When they themselves reached a particular age in which they might need, they might need a modified home, that would be, they would still be there. There are some who say that yes, that they are retired, they have got no income that would support a mortgage, they decided to leave a secure home to move into these houses. Some of them allege, and of course in this matter there will be all sorts of allegations that are made, but some allege that they were assured when they questioned, seeing that it was a short-term assured tenancy, that after the initial period they could be asked to leave at a couple of months' notice. They were assured that that was merely there and to give flexibility to the tenants. The advertising that appeared on the TDECO website, which has now been taken down, but I can remember looking at it when there was another issue around TDECO that arose last year. That advertising was of what, that this was to provide a first-rate tenancy experience. It was exceptionally positive. It talked about tenants being in rented accommodation, but with the security, the sense of stability that they could expect with a landlord was not a private individual, simply with a profit motive, but was a local authority that was concerned with, bigger aspects of the community and, and people's well-being. It's not, social housing of any form. It was they were commercial tenancies. But there is still a huge amount of anger. Now, I'm not asking that this committee turns around and says, okay, we don't sell these properties. I'm not convinced of the immediate financial case. As far as I can see, that if you take into account the increase in property prices since they were built 4 or 5 years ago, you're talking about a rate of return that is well into double figures. Now, of course, the difficulty is that the council is interested not in the overall return, but what comes back into the revenue budget. At the moment, the revenue budget is healthy. The predictions are that it will become very much, it will swing in the other direction because there are so many uncertainties. I don't see, therefore, that if there were a slight delay in moving ahead with these sales, that it would, it would not affect the financial interests of this council. It would give a little bit extra time to explore more with housing associations. Would a housing association not take over the estate, or would it not take over particular houses within the estate, because there are already housing associations there? And I understand that these things have been explored. It strikes me that if the housing associations don't want to buy, one will go back and look at the price. Is the price correct? This is the price that we're going to ask from tenants, not that tenants will be able to buy them. So I think that there are reasons for looking again as to whether there can't be a longer time period, as to whether there cannot be special consideration for a number of people who are there, who are in poor health, who are elderly. Some are in difficult financial circumstances through redundancies, who have been off in long-term sickness, others who are expecting children within a matter of days. And they are now faced with all this uncertainty. And I just feel that if we had a period of saying that, look, yes, it is the council's intention to dispose of these properties, but let us sort of stop and reflect. What are the things, who are the people who are going to be most seriously affected and distressed by this? Let's go back and see if there are any measures that can be taken to slightly soften the blow that we're giving them. And I'm sure that for many there are a blow. One pleasant thing to report, that the lady of the house, on opening and reading the letter, collapsed and an ambulance had to be fetched. Now, it turned out it was not a heart attack, it was only acute stress. But we are causing a huge amount of stress amongst these tenants. And I just feel that it would be sensible not to decide what our overall approach is going to be, but to just have a look and actually have a little bit more discussion with the people who are there and see if there are measures that we could take to make this a little bit more tolerable.
Very interesting, Councillor. I just want to retain interest on it, Councillor Paul.
Well,
I assume you are, because you can't speak on this matter, because you're on the TDEC board, aren't you?
yeah, okay,
Thank
okay.
you. Just checking that point. Councillor Ritchie, thank you for that. Just want to make one point clear. You're talking about, it's a market housing, not RSL
Yes,
housing.
yeah.
Because RS housings aren't affected by this.
Sorry?
It's only the market housing that's affected by this, isn't it?
That's
That's
correct,
right. I
yes.
want to check that, because
Yeah.
obviously the vulnerable people tend to be more on the RSL side. I want to get that point. Councillor Morgan, response to that. I understand the point you made about Homes for Life. I thought that's a standard rather than actually Homes for Life. That's my understanding.
If I can just
Yes,
respond to it.
yes.
Yeah, a corresponding example that tenants have given me is that at the time that payment and protection insurance was introduced, it was all up and above board, and the detail was all there in small print. That hasn't made it impossible for people to bring a serious challenge against banks and other insurance companies for mis-selling. And the irony is that, yes, well, I know now, as I've been told, that it's a building standard, but it's not what people were told by the people who are actually doing the marketing.
Well, do you want to talk and then...
Chair, yeah. I don't, I understand completely the points Councillor Ritchie is making, particularly in response to the social sensitivities, the sale. From a resource perspective, Councillor Ritchie is not objecting to their sale, but it's really the manner in which the implementation takes place. So I don't think this actually changes it fundamentally, but it's really a lesson for us about how we move forward with the rest of the disposal.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Paul, you can speak, I understand.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased that somebody brought up the definition lifetime homes. It is a definition. It doesn't mean that you can actually stay there for a lifetime. It is a definition. And the thought that when Councillor Ritchie painted a devastating picture, no doubt that some of these comments came out of your meeting at the Middlemore Public House the other night. All very well, it's good to get people's opinion. To say that it came as a shock is quite beyond me, because purely and simply, it was about 9 or 10 months ago, our officers will confirm that the residents got letters to the degree that we were looking to dispose of the houses. And at the end of the day, they are private rented houses. They were built for a reason, and the reason was to, as you quite rightly said, look after our revenue. And if you look at the 151 officer, she'll tell you that medium-term financial plan is in a dire state in about 5 years' time. So, yes, we need the assets. The residents have been consulted on a regular basis, please be assured of that, because myself and Councillor Guildford, one of the things that we insisted on, and officers have had meetings with the residents. So, you know, it's very difficult. I would ask our officers to clarify one or two matters if
I'll do that, Chairman, Colin, when it's time is right. Thank you. Councillor Organ.
Yeah, Councillor Richard, got every sympathy for the things that you said, but this issue was passed in April 16, 17?
That's right.
April 17, was it?
yeah.
July 17.
Sorry?
July 17.
July 17. Okay.
16.
16. Okay. I don't know whether you were a member then or how you voted on it. So this is
My first meeting, and it was a strategy group.
all right. Okay.
Remember well, did
I don't know.
It wasn't on strategy.
Okay, all right. But this is actually decision was made an awful long time ago, and I will give you every confidence that all the issues that you have raised have been thoroughly debated and put forward quite vigorously in ensuring that we did the right thing. And I'm of course I'm entirely sympathetic with regard to people's state, especially with regard to the housing portfolio I have responsibility for. But the conclusion comes is the council is acting quite correctly in this matter, and there is an argument with regard to the monies and revenues we need to bring in for difficulties that are going to come in the future, and it is about trying to maximise those revenues so we actually provide services for the majority. These good people are in their homes, and I'm sure that whenever they had got those letters, that would have been an absolutely devastation to receive that on. Can you imagine any of us receiving those sort of letters on our doorstep? But nevertheless, the council decided on what they wanted to do with these assets. There was a long discussion on how we need to support and help those people whose houses will be sold, and the teams here have been briefed to ensure that they get the support that they need. And as you quite rightly said, there is nothing really to say about going forward with this. And I feel at any time it would have been difficult. You know, we could give them, you know, how long do we give people with regard to these issues? But those are all judgment decisions. But I'm entirely comfortable and go with the consensus that this is something that needs to be done. It will benefit all the residents of Daventry district in the future. It will bring in much needed revenue to ensure that we can continue to provide services. And I feel that this council is doing everything they can for the people who are affected by this to ensure that they get the advice and the signposting they need to find themselves a new home. And I am sure that where there are special circumstances, that this council will be sympathetic to those and provide the help and support that those people need to ensure that they get a new home.
Thank you, Councillor Organ. I just want to reassure the opposition members that Councillor Organ has been very, very thorough behind the scenes on this. He had a similar view, maybe the view you had, to actually test the waters on this, and I think his words there confirm what has come to conclusion. And I think that's, I have to say, I give great respect to Councillor Organ because he's very passionate about this, as you are, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Poole probably already covered the point I was going to raise. However, I would just like reassurance from either Councillor Poole or Councillor Organ that issues such as notice periods and the way that these sales and the markets are concluded is something that's going to be or formalised in conjunction with the residents, and that they'll be informed and involved at every step of the process, and that process will be conducted face to face, not at distance, and in a highly sensitive manner.
I'm not entirely sure about the face-to-face, but I'm sure if that is necessary, that will be done. I have been given the utmost assurances, because of the sensitivities of these things, that it will be dealt with delicately and supportively towards those families affected by this sale. But once again, sometimes difficult decisions need to be made for the benefit of the majority, and I'm sure that even though a small number of families will be affected in quite a profound way, the majority of people will benefit from this decision in the future. But I can give you that assurance, I can give you that assurance, that everything's going to be done for these people affected by this sale.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor
Thank
Osborne.
Surely this is no different to what happens in the real world. Surely these tenancies must be 6 months or a year leasehold tenancies. There must be something like that, I would have thought. And that's not uncommon out there in the real world, people that are renting out properties.
Market rent.
People that rent them out very often change, they're took over by other companies. Sometimes they're offered to buy them, and sometimes they sign up with new agreements. That's what happens in the real world. This is not direct with the council. I don't think the council is being unreasonable. I think it's doing it properly, not improperly. You know, it is proper and correct and right.
Yes, you know, Councillor Osborne, there's a lot of examples in the real world where
Yeah, this is
awful,
exactly the
awful
same
landlords.
as what happens out there.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chairman. Two points that I really want to speak about, and that is item number 9, so I'll start with that one while we're already on it. I would actually go in a totally different direction, and I would like to see the decision totally turned around and we don't dispose of those 32 properties. If we were getting no return on those properties, I could understand it, but the return is a good return. I was on the council when it was agreed that we would build these properties and form this company, and sitting in that council meeting, from what I heard, I was led to believe that these would be built as many more people were now renting and not affording to buy, and that they would be long-term rentals. I know that there's many residents up there, and because of that reason, that they were led to believe that they were going to be long-term rentals. When you've just said about private landlords renting out, and you have a lot of 6-month or 12-month agreement, when you know that, you actually know that every 6 months or whenever your agreement is, there will be the opportunity that they might be selling those properties. That's not what these people are led to believe. That's why these people have invested a lot of money in these properties. You speak to some of them have had £2,000 and £3,000 that they've spent doing up on their garden because they knew they were going to be there for long term. A lot of these people were already in quite secure rental accommodation that they actually gave up. There was one resident that she actually had been on the waiting list for 3 years. She was in a secure rental property. For 3 years, her and her partner had been on the list because they wanted a long-term secure rental. They didn't have the deposit to buy on the house, like most of these people up here, because otherwise they would have bought their properties. So, you know, just to compare it with a normal commercial rental, that's not right. And we are a public body. We built these houses for long-term rent, or so I was led to believe.
You're part of the decision making, maybe. You might remind you what the decision making was about. And
I've often said a lot of things, the way that they're very brief in this paper, one little paragraph, you know, on a big paper, sometimes it is quite easy to even miss
not the original decision, not the original decision.
Well, I'm just saying now that actually, I feel, if you go into the town now and you go walk into those agencies and you see how many rental properties there are, there's no way these 32 families will get housed because there are 32 properties that are up for rent that will meet their needs. And not only that, a lot of these people they've got pets. Go into the estate agent, most rental properties don't allow you to have a pet. So you've now got a family with 2 children, you've got a dog and a cat. They're now going to be kicked out. They go into the rental property, sorry, can't take the dog, can't take the cat. What should we do? Go to the vets and have a family pet put down because we can't even take it? This is a huge issue. This is a disruption of all of these families, their schooling, everything else. We've just said actually about, you know, we've just gone through this policy. It's not all words, it's about aspiration. These people have got aspiration. Their aspiration was to stay in these properties long term and have a secure home for their families. That now they've given a letter to say you've got a month to express an interest on whether you wish to purchase this property. well, how long are you giving them to actually find a deposit to purchase
I
this
was
property?
notified some time ago, well, that's just mentioned.
Well, one resident, she moved in 12 months ago, she never received a letter because she had no idea, which is why she was on the waiting list for 3 years, that she moved out of her rental property to move into this secure rental property. And now she is devastated. So I think it's absolutely disgusting.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Councillor Osborne.
I've got to come back on that. Like, I don't know that, I'm sure an officer will say, but there are several kinds of tenancy out there. One is the one we're talking about, the 6 months and the year one, and the other is the complete one where you can't get rid of you anyway. Now, I cannot believe, if that is totally the case, I will support her view. But I don't believe that those people were letting, that were put in those houses and that got an assured tenancy for life. Now, if that is the fact, I will support your view. But if it's not the fact, I will expect you to support my view.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne.
And I don't believe that that is correct.
Well, find out in a minute.
I'm sure we'll be told in a second.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Was it someone else? Councillor Morgan. Sorry. Let me come back.
Yeah, Chair, I think the debate kind of moved on anyway, but I wanted to revisit the original point, and that is it's around releasing the investment in an asset to redeploy to get a greater revenue, which will be beneficial to all of the people of the district. But having said that, I mean, we don't have any quarrel with the fact that at the time we thought it was the right decision to make. And I think actually most importantly that if we do go into this kind of venture again in the future, then actually we'll learn lessons from the way those were marketed. But I think in the short term, yes, we need to redeploy our investments, but I think it's all about the sensitive nature in which we conduct it over the coming months.
Thank you, Steve, for that. Councillor Morgan. I'm sure everyone's aware of the pressures on the finances of this county, Northamptonshire County at the moment, public finances. And this again shows the importance for local authorities like ourselves to plan for the future, to plan sustainably, not just here, there and everywhere, because we have a duty to our taxpayers to make sure we deliver our services at the best possible cost. And therefore this council has been doing this for years, and I think that's what we want to continue doing. Notwithstanding your point, Councillor Randall, we also have a duty though to look after the public purse and to invest for the future. And I get all that about how disappointed these tenants are. I get that, not disagreeing with that. But I want to check in a minute about a few things for our officers, about the tenancies they signed up to in paragraphs. What were they? Were they tenancies for life? Were they short tenancies? Is that right? If they're forever? Well, how long were the tenancies for?
Chairman, the tenancies of the house has been of essentially 2 times since they've first been let. Almost all of them were let initially as a short hold tenancies, which gives you 6 months, and they then roll over into what's known as a statutory periodic tenancy, which is then terminable on notice thereafter. So the bulk of the tenancies are currently statutory periodics. There are probably a few which are still ASTs because they're still relatively new. We did have one which was actually leased to the Vorsley Hall Hotel for the use of a member of staff. So it was actually a commercial lease, but that's now come to an end anyway. So I think all the current ones are either ASTs or statutory periodics, so relatively short-term tenancies.
Okay, so that's what answers your question.
Can I go on to the next item, because I remembered I was going to speak on
You're
something
wrong,
else as well.
So you said that now about the tenancies?
It's how they were perceived. It was.
Okay,
and
we'll come back to the minute.
But can I go on to my next
Wrong.
point now? So, because the cadets building, so we're just saying about getting better.
Can I just finish this one first? So can we just get this one out of the way first? So on that point, Simon, about what people were told initially,
Yeah, I mean,
because it's been said a few times.
it has been said that verbal assurances were given. Well, frankly, we're talking about, what, 4 or 5 years ago now. No one has yet produced anything in written form which persuades me that assurances of the nature just like were given, and certainly the website didn't give those assurances. And just to be factual, the website did not, we were very clear about this, did not promote it as a Daventry Council project. It was quite a deliberate choice to, as far as possible, distance the company from the council to present this as a commercial product in the marketplace. So that, I'm afraid, isn't correct. Picking up 1 or 2 other factual points, registered social landlord takeover, yes, they would, but at a price well below market value, and that is what the initial tender process established. So that's a choice for the council, but the council has chosen to seek the market value of the houses, and that involves them being sold individually, which is where we're at. In terms of considering tenants in difficult circumstances, for want of better language, that is the intention. The letter that went out to all tenants very clearly said to them, this is a process we expect to take about 18 months, and if there are particular circumstances the council is made aware of, we will seek to do the batching of properties for sale, taking that into account. So, as of yet, no one's come back to request that, but if there is something which needs to be dealt with, if they make us aware of it, that can be taken into account. In terms of the values, we are confident, having had a number of independent valuations done, the values being sorted out in the right order, but I think the Chief Finance Officer wants to say a few words on that as well.
Thank you, Simon. Audrey?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Really, Simon's covered that in terms of the 151 is expected to sign a Section 25 statement about the robustness of the estimates, and I'm absolutely satisfied in terms of the valuations that are in there, that they are an accurate estimate of what we can expect to get as market value.
Thank you. Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a note of reassurance. I thank Councillor Brown for his question, but to reiterate what you said, Chairman, that Councillor Auger will be kept in the picture. He put up an extremely robust argument, and I welcome that, and be assured that we will assist in every way possible.
Thank you. I understand we're in the political arena here, so I understand Councillor Randall and Councillor Brown. But I think it's very important for us councillors to represent the facts rather than fiction, because that can obviously upset people when they're told stuff that's not right, and they believe it, and then they find out later on, of course, it wasn't right. So I think all politicians have a responsibility to put the facts out there, and not to spin it too much, because obviously when we come back to the facts, we will do, if we get facts out to our residents there, those residents there I should say, then we will put the facts back out. But we have a duty to act responsibly. Yes, Councillor Ritchie.
If I may respond, Chair, I hope that wasn't an insinuation that some of us have not been presenting facts.
No, I'm just making the point.
The difficulty that some of us have is actually getting hold of the facts.
I'm surprised by that.
And I think that what we need a lot more. I have asked those tenants who might have access to materials that would establish how these properties were actually marketed 4 or 5 years ago, to see if they can actually produce them. But I think it may be that they have got a legal case of mis-selling that they can bring against this council, and for that, all of the information that they may have is almost certain to be in this building somewhere, and I therefore hope that that the officers here will also take a look and make sure that everything is put out into the open.
Thank you. I'm sure that's the case, about openness in terms of the information that's available.
Chairman, I struggle a little bit because I'm not entirely sure what information we're talking about now.
At the time he actually marketed these properties.
Not all that meant is because the council has an archiving and destruction policies, and things we want, we don't keep all records forever. So I can't give that assurance, no. Clearly, if there was a discussion to be had, we would look and see what was available. If I may, Chairman, I would also say we are confident there was no mis-selling, not that selling is quite the right concept here,
No.
but misrepresentation.
Misrepresentation. Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
I don't have anything further to add now, Chair.
No, we're going on to another item, I thought, apart from this one.
Yes, is that one complete?
That's one, yes, that one's completed now, yeah.
That is correct, is it that complete? I thought there was a question on
Yeah, that was my
that specific item.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Allen's advised, so my apologies. Yes, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, so my other question then, moving on to the Cadet Centre.
Oh yes, Cadet Centre.
Obviously, we purchased this in 2007.
Yeah.
All those years ago when we needn't have bothered. And obviously, we've got, we paid out the money, we're going to get the same money back. It's valued at 550,000. have we not got a duty to the residents of this district to get the best return on our money and actually try and secure 550,000? Because to me, on one hand, you seem to be saying one thing, and on the other hand, you seem to be saying another. So I'm totally confused
Well,
now.
I'm totally confused by what you're saying by that, actually.
Well, because what you're saying on the actual Pepper Box Hill is that we need to get the best return and for all residents in the district, and yet the cadet centre is now valued at 550,000, but we're quite happy to, dismiss the extra 209,000 and just buy it back for.
I think
So
there's two,
sell it back for what it is.
these are two separate issues.
Well, yes, but I'm saying, how can you say one thing in one hand and one thing on the other? Why are we not going after the market value of what you're saying it's worth? Why
So
are
what do you
we not
recommend we
going
do?
Why are we not going under the five after the? Well, I'm saying, how can you say one thing on one hand and another on the other? We should be trying to get as much money as possible if that's what we're supposed to be doing. So why are we not going after the 550,000?
I think they're quite separate, actually.
They might be separate issues,
Yes.
but what I'm saying is, how can you say on one hand that we won't go after the market value and we'll just buy it back for what it was all those years ago, and in the other hand, we want to do the best, get the best return for the people in the district? It's just.
Councillor Oswald, you want to add there and comment to this?
I've got to say, Councillor Randall, if that's what you believe, I think you should put that as a proposal, get a seconder, and we ought to debate it.
Yes.
If not, let's move on, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The original price, the monies are being held by a solicitor. The property is no longer required for development, and the statement of "we needn't have bothered" by Councillor Randall is absolutely beyond me, because she knows about the fact that a major supermarket chain was going to take over virtually the whole site, and that major supermarket chain pulled out, like many others, of the big four that pulled out of their investments, so we had to start again. And it was welcomed by all at a meeting that I had, because I invited all councillors to that meeting, that the new scheme was far better. Therefore, the cadet centre is no longer required. Now, the cadets have a choice. They can take the cadet centre back at the price that they paid, or we paid for it, yeah? Or, alternatively, we can evict them. That's the choice. Now, if it goes on the second one, then yes, it could go out to market value. But, there we are.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Randall?
No, I'd like to put forward a proposal then.
What's your proposal, Councillor
My
Randall?
proposal would be that we go after the market value of the land of 550,000
On the cadets building?
on the cadet, or on any.
No, on the cadets building.
Oh, on that one, yeah, I would say that.
But that would mean evicting the cadets, Chairman.
They can find
So
somewhere
that-
else, the
that's
same as
fine.
a food bank.
Okay, so let's get this right. So Councillor Randall's proposing
That we go
that
after
the cadets
market value.
building should be sold at the market rate of
Yeah,
550,000.
I think actually that we can't say one thing on one scheme and one thing on another. If we're going out to return, to get the best return on the money for the people of this district, we've got to do it on everything. So in
Okay.
that case, I'll put forward a proposal that we go out to market value of 550,000.
Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? So that's forward. Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. I think possibly that Councillor Randall raises an interesting point, and we are ultimately talking about £209,000 of public money, but the crux of the matter seems to be in the third paragraph under 4.3. Since the purchase monies have been held by the cadets organisation solicitors in case the transaction had to be reversed.
Yeah.
There seems to be an implication therein that there was an agreement in principle at the time of the original transaction that there may be a reversal at that original price, and I'd be interested in officers' advice on whether those assurances were given in
I think you're probably
2007.
correct. Thank you, Councillor Brown. And Simon, do you want to confirm that?
Chairman, Councillor Brown is correct. Originally there was a lease in place which included a buyback provision. Essentially the plan was we would acquire the freehold with the council. The council would build a replacement cadet centre, and that would then allow the lease to terminate down, but that would have cost us probably the order of £1 million, maybe a little more. That has not proceeded for the reasons that outlined in the report. The logical step is to follow through that unwinding process. Now, strictly legally, we're not bound by that because the lease has run its term. It took far longer than anybody involved expected. But that was an actual transaction that was originally agreed since.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Morgan?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. The very point that Councillor Brown actually raised, I was going to raise myself as the report. The interesting, from a principle, I don't think you can argue with Councillor Randall's point. Basically, our duty is to maximise the amount of money we get. But actually, I was also concerned about the technicalities around that paragraph, which I think Simon has now explained. And therein, I think, lies the more complex issue for us in terms of this particular one. And I'd like to think, obviously, that us preparing this, we'd had a good look at those documents anyway, and understood our position and the risks of that, of course.
Any more on this report, Councillor Morgan?
No, they're the two main items that I thought were most interesting to explore, and they have been indeed proved to be so.
So we've got two recommendations then, committee?
Two recommendations.
Are you happy to accept those recommendations? Great. Any against? Committee? No? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Next item then is Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2018-19. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give the recommendation again. That it be recommended that Council's Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2018-19 be approved. Only a couple of things to point out in this one, really. I think the most interesting thing we've seen around, basically how money, etc., or the money that we collect and then later reimburse, etc., is the interest rates in particular, and keeping our money secure. And of course, we've probably heard, many of us today, on the later news about potential interest rate rises, which in this respect could be, of course, favourable.
The rates staying the same today, but thank you for confirming that. The rates staying the same today.
Yeah, absolutely.
The future projection.
Forward projections. And of course, the Governor of the Bank of England's comments on that. But really, basically, the overall point here is about keeping it safe. But there is one other thing I'd like to draw your attention to, and that is the December 2017 revised Prudential and Treasury Management Codes, which will give us some work around that, actually set out the way we operate and report, etc. And already, actually, I'm pleased to say, as one of the code requirements, we, a couple of weeks ago, held training on this particular topic area, which was very well received, actually. And I think most notably, Councillor Auger got very excited by the session, and also brought him some illumination on these topic areas. I think the only main real area to kind of further explore on that is how this will be further implemented, and once we get the actual guidance, how Audra and her team will actually set about making sure this is fully implemented in accordance with the new codes. But other than that, Chair, I don't really have too much on this one to mention. I think it's self-explanatory, and it's all about safekeeping of cash.
Many thanks to you, Councillor Morgan.
Careful compliance.
That's a very good job there, because all just got that. So, any questions? If not, can we move to the recommendation? Happy to approve? Thank you. And the final one tonight, Councillor Morgan, is the capital revenue budget, medium-term financial plan. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So again, I'll begin with the recommendation. So that if it recommended that the 2018-19 budget proposals be approved, relating to A to E, which are A, 2018-19 General Revenue Fund Budget. We'll look at page 81 on that one.
Do you do them one at a time, sir? Go through them one at a time, should we?
Well, I'll take them on block and then
Okay,
highlight
yeah.
a few
Okay,
points. Because the way the document is read, they're not really like as necessarily discrete units as such. 2018-19 Social Expenses Revenue Budget, point out one item on that. Capital Programme 2017-18 to 2022-23 and update capital receipts. 2018 to 23 Capital Strategy, which is Annex A, and the Investment Management Practices for Non-Treasury Investments. So a little bit to get through there, but as always with these, I trust members have read the papers. But first of all, I'd like to draw your attention to page 81, actually.
Yep.
Now, obviously we are Daventry District Council, not Northampton County Council, but it won't escape anybody's notice about the amount of coverage of the County Council, particularly over the past week, and even today, if you're listening to the PM programme on Radio 4, was also covered. And really the numbers in the General Fund Revenue Reserves projection, so this is the number after really the last few pages have been taken into account. And you can see the number in brackets, of course in our case, is a surplus, so 2.724 million. So we are in a good position now, a good place, and our job is to plan for the future. However, over the projected period there running up to 2022-23, we can see the situation for the revenues does deteriorate, and actually we end up that period at 4.214 million deficit. So really this would need to start concentrating our minds, and items we spoke about increasing revenue from redeploying capital into other investments. We also should focus our minds on all of the discussion as our responsibilities. So that's really one of the key points there. That's the programme after we set out. That I'd like to draw your attention to as a table. The next one is relating to special expenses. And basically the summary of this is DDC element going forward with council tax or Band D residents of the district will actually increase by £1.13. And as you can see in a little bit more detail there, there's obviously the issue of the special expenses to the town, which relates of course to the new joint venture with Norse. And the important thing to really point out there is obviously after the period that we've been working in the contract with Enterprise Amy, that does now come to an end over the next few months, and we've obviously worked hard to make provision for a different relationship, which will be interesting over the coming years, so we'll have much more control on that relationship because of the nature of it. But really the main point is there is that increase, and obviously take any questions on 6.2. We then move forward to the next section, which is around the capital programme. And you can see here the capital programme really is around using capital to create assets. And 2017-18 we have the 10 million figure in the approved programme, which then reduces over a period of time to 1 million. And as you can see in the subsequent sections, 7.2, etc., we then break out some of the specific capital purchases, etc. So for instance there, you can see items such as a purchase of 55 Ericsson, etc. So how these actually all make up that number. And really in terms of the final point is the main document there in Appendix A, which really positions the capital strategy going forward, and the investment management practices and non-trading investments. I think I'll leave that there, Chair, and see if there's any questions on that, which we can take up. But really to wrap up our thinking on that one, I think it's well expressed in the conclusions, which is we have a steady ship now, particularly a rocky sea around us. We've been prudent across all of our activities, particularly making these wise choices like we have done earlier. But with the challenge around particularly the reset of business rates and some uncertainties around that going forward, the situation in the coming years does get more challenging, and we really need to focus on those future points in how we set out thinking and decisions now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Any questions or points? Councillor Randall?
Yeah, I have on the Daventry special expenses
Page
budget.
six, sorry.
So this is on page 83
Yeah.
and 6.2.
6.2, yeah.
So for Daventry residents, there will be an increase of 38.27% on the special expenses. Is that, am I correct?
Reads that way, yes.
That's correct, Councillor Randall. £17.50 actually, as it clearly says, and that's really the best way of putting it is basically because of the Norse JV and the reallocation of the work around that. So I'm not sure the best way to put this really, but it was, we probably had it quite good over the last 7 years, and now it has to be rectified. But going forward, that should be more straightforward, so it's really a jump this year.
So Daventry residents in Band D are going to see an increase of 17.5%.
Not 17.5,
£17.50 or 38.27% to do with the new contract, effectively then.
That's correct, Councillor.
Well, let's hope we see a great improvement then.
Well, it should be on the baseline you used to talk about, Wendy, so it should be improved.
I think actually, Chair, I mean, obviously I can say, speaking as a resident of the town, and also as a councillor for Abbey South, I can fully understand why some members of the public may feel that's a challenging increase. And our job actually is to make sure the North delivers very well to high standards. And also think back to my time on scrutiny, how many times we've looked at the performance issues around the contract we've had. So I certainly also want to see improvements. And frankly, £17.50 as a percentage looks like a lot of money, but if it delivers a better quality service, I'm sure it will be supported by the residents.
Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, just coming back by that, it's the fact that obviously over this contract things have deteriorated. So really, residents might feel that they're paying this extra just to get it back to how it was when it was in-house and through no fault of their own. That's how they might see that. But there is another part there on the purchase of 55 Ericsson. I don't know whether to bring it up here or when it's later on in the agenda. And I wish it had all sort of been together really, so I wouldn't be switching from one page to the other. But I just read it, going back, we disposed of a property that was used as emergency housing because it was no longer suitable, and we sold that in the 9th of January for 140,000. Why?
This is your point of financial one?
Yes, because I'm just wondering, if we've sold something for emergency housing for 140,000, and this still is to do with housing homeless people, why aren't we using part of that money?
Sorry?
Chairman, the house at Jubilee Road, which is also sold 48 Jubilee Road, was originally purchased not with housing money. It was originally purchased actually for like the South redevelopment, but it was helpful to use it for that purpose. So the money was never housing money, it's a simple answer.
Thank you. Councillor Paul.
Thank you. It may come as a bit of a shock that I agree with Councillor Randall. With regard to the special expenses for the town, I've voiced my opinion before. Having sat at many town council meetings, a number of town councillors have said, well, we don't want to let anybody in from out of town, or we don't want to do this, because it's not for the town people. I look at it the other way, that the town is the hub of our district, and it's for the benefit of our whole district, and I've voiced my opinion that I don't agree with the special expense, but there we are, Chairman.
Very good indeed. Councillor Morgan, think you're on the point?
I think, Chair, we need to be realistic about this. I don't think any of us like an increase in our bills. And there's been a lot of coverage on this topic today, including some quite vibrant ones on the front of the Daily Mail, for instance. And I think the figures around 95% of councils are challenged now to raise council tax to pay for these services. But I think we go back to the one that the overall figure for district council is actually £1.13. But yeah, I agree with everybody. You know, that is the cost for the service, and we should keep a very clear eye on it in terms of the North joint venture to make sure we get what we're putting.
To make sure the service is good.
The service is good, and I know if sorry about this, Councillor, about stealing Councillor. There is an invite again for Councillor Guildford to go to the April scrutiny meeting. I'll stop talking about this other thing. To actually present an update on this, and of course members have a duty, if you like, to make sure it's held to account in terms of performance, etc., through the various mechanisms, to actually make sure that the extra we're charging residents is good value for money.
Yeah. So you do it on the other side now, and then Adam can do it on the scrutiny side.
Well, I think we're going to swap.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. With your permission, Chairman, I'd just like to move away from the North issue for a moment.
Yes.
Speaking with my experiences elsewhere
Yes.
in mind, look over the medium-term financial plan, and it's obvious that got prudent management in previous years. We have a solid book of assets, and solid reserves that are going to allow us to weather any storm over the next few years. However, tying together the medium-term financial plan and the last item that we discussed, which was, I don't know if an aggressive disposal of assets is a correct assessment of what we're doing, but certainly a significant disposal of assets. Can Councillor Morgan assure us that our book of assets will continue to be in reasonable health moving forward through the medium-term financial plan?
I think the simple answer to that is that, as we've seen through the programme earlier in the previous item, we have a set of assets, and our duty is to get the best value for them and to reinvest money where it gets a better return to help support the programme.
It's not just Councillor Morgan's responsibility, it's all our responsibility in the top team, the council as a whole. Thank you, Adam. Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, question. It used to be, because it used to annoy me considerably, and I've brought it up dozens of times, that the villages, Daventry Town pays no money towards their lighting. Every village pays for their lighting, and it was considered at the time that all the villages pay for all of Daventry's lighting. So the Daventry Parish Council.
What century was this in, Councillor Oswald?
Sorry?
What century was this in?
This was a few years ago,
Few
and
years
I
ago,
think it still exists. Before you give me the answer, I think it still exists.
Oh, really?
So I don't believe, unless it's altered considerably, that Daventry Town pay for their lighting. I believe that all the villages pay for their lighting.
Councillor Simon.
Chairman, I think Councillor Oswald is broadly correct.
Right.
It simply comes from who has provided the lights. And in most of the villages, I can't swear for all of them because it does vary, the parish council provides them and therefore pay for them. And in Daventry Town, for historical reasons, the lighting was either provided by this council or its predecessors and then adopted as highway or provided by the Highway Authority, and is therefore paid for by the Notts County Council.
So the point I'm making, Chairman, should Daventry aren't that badly off, if they had to pay for their own lighting, like all our villages had to, then it would cost them hundreds of thousands of pounds per year, like it costs their parishes. Okay? So you're doing pretty well, Daventry. We're paying for your lighting.
Okay, Steve, fair point.
It's annoyed me for a long time.
Yeah. I think the point also to remind you, we are a low council tax. Yeah, 9% of the bill. That's our preceptive Daventry, and you've got the parishes and the town council on top of that. The county council, the police, the county council is the main burden. And the trouble nowadays, of course, the council tax system is broken, because clearly adult social care and children's social care are taking up much of that budget. And what you're going to see in the years ahead now is the services diminishing. I say this with a heavy heart, actually. They've always been a great one for services and good value for the taxpayer. How can that continue And in this county in particular, we've got a real challenge ahead of us now. We're waiting for the outcome of the Government Inspector's report next month. The truth about the County Council's finances are coming to fruition at long last. As we know about in this council, you only got to look at the last 3 years' responses we gave to their budget. The number of responses going in this year, we've had major concerns about their budgets over many years. The reason why we have those concerns is because we're about focusing on our residents and services. And what we want to do is offer, as councillors, we're only in this business to actually do our third party in, to do our best for our residents. And therefore, the one way you do that is actually by building long-term sustainability, which this council's done over many years. And I remember years ago it wasn't always that way, so I know what it's like the other way around. But we've now got that in place through good management, but we have a very ambitious agenda. So our ambition hasn't gone out the window, but what has stayed has been the good financial management. Unfortunately, we're going to hit some challenges in the years ahead now, which will make our challenges be even greater. But we'll come to that when we come to it. But I'm just making the point, it's easy for everybody to harp on about what they want and what they don't want. But the reality about this council is we've taken tough decisions over the years, we continue to take tough decisions for the right reasons, and they pay off in the long term. Unfortunately, we're part of a bigger world, and that bigger world may well affect us soon. So I'm just letting you know that obviously we'll continue doing what we're doing and do it well, and we'll meet that challenge as and when it arrives. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, just briefly, Chairman, we have a reputation with our neighbours of working well with their neighbours.
We do, yeah.
However, there have been a couple of instances in recent years, and even if I talk about the Waste Partnership, where they offered several £1 million benefit to NCC and they refuse it because it doesn't fit, and there are other property issues where they've just literally sat on their hands and buried their head in the sand. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would suggest if there are no questions, I think the numbers are very transparent. It's underpinned by, there is a transparency around the numbers will deteriorate, and that's what we're highlighting today. Yep. There's been huddling over this. The backdrop, of course, in the county is everybody's concerned that this is all about us and now and employment in the future, and having these wise conversations about how we invest in our resources.
Yeah, the point I'm really making is we had this before, we see deficits arrive in years ahead, we plan for it, we manage it. The point about the bigger elephant in the room is it's going to affect us sooner or later. We have to be ready for that.
Yes, and according to this, you can see when, that's the point.
You can, yeah. Councillor Richard.
I apologise for being rather lost as to where we are on the agenda at the moment.
We're still on the still on page 73.
I was looking at page 86.
86, yeah. Yep.
Sorry, I was looking at it. Forgive me, it's slightly more difficult fiddling through it, I think. Sorry, page 85.
Down the bottom.
Perhaps on future occasions, Chair, it may be that if members who are not on this committee but who are intending coming to the meetings can perhaps notify staff so that they have sets of papers rather than fiddling with iPads.
You can always ask for them.
Thank you, I wasn't aware of that. I just wanted to ask about the Rugby and Daventry Sailing Club at Drayton Reservoir. It's an Abbey North Ward. I should be making a plug for it, but I'm not. I remember, Chair, you having great fun misrepresenting me when I challenged about a year ago a grant of 50,000 that was made to the Banbury Sailing Club.
Banbury, that's right.
My argument was that it was a club of which membership was, fairly expensive, and therefore we were essentially giving voluntary grants, which are, the budget is very limited, for the benefit of people who were already fairly well off. And I do remember that one of the defences that was offered was that the prices for being a member at the Banbury Club were not nearly as high as they were for being a member at the Britain Selling Club. I'm therefore very surprised that we are talking about getting any support whatsoever. My concern is that when it comes to community groups and voluntary groups within a community coming forwards to, to bid for funds, to formulate projects, it is almost inevitable that it is the areas that are perhaps more prosperous, where people have got wider backgrounds and so on, that will come forwards with more projects. And I just feel that, I know that the amount of money that is being discussed here is not major, but really as a matter of principle I would question whether this was an appropriate organisation to be offering our financial support to. There must be many other more deserving things. I'm not suggesting for one moment that there is anything wrong with the Rugby and Daventry Sailing Club. It is probably excellent and it probably provides an excellent service. But it is the people to whom the service is provided that should be the thing that guides us as to how we're using our funds.
I think it's very dangerous, Councillor Richard, to make assumptions about membership of any club, actually. Very dangerous indeed, and I think you should be very careful on that. Councillor Griffin.
Oh yes, on that point, I have to point out here that youth organisations use this, and clearly they must get special rates. And it includes Scouts and Guides, for instance, and I can't see that all Scouts and Guides have got very rich parents, and other youth organisations similarly. So I don't think it is just rich individuals that are using this club.
Okay, thank you. Maria.
If I can clarify, Chairman, this actually came in as an application for grant funding, and we only consider applications from charities, community and voluntary organisations, and they are open to all, and they have a whole range of criteria that they have to meet. So although there's only a couple of paragraphs in your report, we have allocated all of this year's capital grant funding, and this was a high scoring application, and although we've allocated all the funding, we actually identified, which is part of our strategy, that there is planning obligations funding, section 106, relating to exactly the right relevant heading from a very nearby application some years before, relating to Middlemore. So it was deemed appropriate that it could be drawn down. The other thing really plainly, going on to page 86, is that this club is actually going to generate a scheme worth £50,000 just by us providing a grant to cover the materials, because the club itself are going to be putting in all of the labour to do this work. So it was a very high scoring community grant application that has been recommended that we draw down section 106 money from this appropriate pot of money. It's very high scoring and it ticks all the boxes. So it's not in the least elitist, it's a community and voluntary organisation that meets our criteria for grant.
Christine, how that reassures you about the elitist bit. Councillor Osborne.
I've just got to say that I too used to think similar about sailing clubs. But doing an awful lot of fishing, and I went also to, we've got a Hollowell, we've got Pittsford. When I was chairman of the council, I went to Pittsford to meet some of the Olympic sailors. I learned how easy and how cheap it was to actually go sailing for a day. It was cheaper than fishing, to be quite honest.
You're still fishing, aren't you?
I went to Hollowell, and they held a national All-England youth sailing competition there. And it was pleased to see people that were going into Olympic Games were going to Boddington Reservoir and Daventry Reservoir. Again, are quite cheap to go to. It's cheaper to sail at Daventry Reservoir and open to all people of all stature than it is to fish. Chairman, I fully support sailing now, but I did used to think exactly the same as you, that it was just for the rich few, but it's not for the rich few, it's for the many.
Thanks, Steve, for that. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chairman. Some of the things that I was going to say, Maria Taylor's already said for me.
Thank you.
But I will say this, that Rugby and Daventry Sailing Club, they do a hell of a lot for youth and young people, and also they do help with disabled. I checked on them. Now, quite frankly, when we look at sport, and recreation, this section 106 money was already allocated for that reason. And when anybody applies for any of our grants, etc., they have to meet our point scoring system, i.e. to the value of the community, etc., before we award any money. I will say this, in my portfolio role, which includes sport, I am always anxious to include and encourage sport for youth and young people, physical activity, and also some of the sports that aren't the top sports. Try and encourage others to take part. And this is shown when people, if they decide to come, it shows when we have our sports awards. Because I can remember Pittsford Sailing Club, who also do a lot for youth and young people, winning one of our awards a couple of years back. So I certainly see no problem in this. We need to encourage participation of young people and people of all ages in all sorts of sports.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've been working with officers over the last few months with regard to the, sorry, I was going to call it a pond, a reservoir. Also, the sailing club, I've had talks with them, and the fishing club, I've also had talks with them. I must declare an interest that my daughter's fiance now has got the record carp for the pond, sorry, for the reservoir. Well, it is a pond, isn't it? And also, you know, working with CRT, because at the end of the day, the pond is with the CRT. So I take on board what Councillor Ritchie has said, and assure them I'm working with officers to get major improvements to that area.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Morgan?
Thanks, Chair. I welcome Councillor Ritchie's comments, actually. I do remember that debate quite vividly, and also welcome him attending. And actually, the best advice is to get a paper copy as environmentally and sustainable as that. It is quite hard to navigate your way around otherwise. But I like this concept of it being elitist, and I agree it's not necessarily the case, but we do come to these things with preconceptions. And of course, the fact that we have strict criteria around it means that we have a fair process. What really strikes me these days is the fact that you know, there's kind of two big things going on, I think, in society. There's the kind of hysteria about people having health deficiencies, you know, vitamin D or whatever, for not being out, and undernourished people in society, or ultra-processed food. And yet, on the other side, there's a whole lot of stuff goes on all the time that is really out there. And I know from very personal experience, not doing quite a Councillor Paul story, but you know, two small young children now really starting to explore opportunities for them. There's a lot on, and I remember actually not too long ago seeing such an advert for this and thinking we might go along actually. So I think it is, as Councillor Hill says, about being inclusive as much as possible, increasing participation for the general health, and I hope with that, Councillor Ritchie, you will support that despite those initial preconceptions.
Thank you. Now, I think it's important actually, we can all have preconceptions. Some people think people who live in villages are wealthy. Well, obviously some people in villages are wealthy. A lot of people in villages are very poor. So it's about getting that balance right and not having letting those preconceptions get in the way. For us as decision makers, is getting the evidence first, then hopefully that will actually override preconceptions.
Yes, Chair. I think we all have them, and that's fair, and it's having the discussion about what facts are.
Very good, Councillor Ritchie. Can we move to the recommendations now? Can we read them?
Agree.
Thank you. A to E.
Agree.
Thank you. Any against? No, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Can we move on now to access and communications issues, ICT strategy 2018 to 2021. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this strategy paper is to update the approach of the ITC, Information and Communications Technology, and to set a clear framework of how the Council will use the ICT to support the delivery of services for the next 3 years. The ICT steering group reviewed the current strategy, noting progress made and identifying any ongoing work to roll forward to the new strategy. Details are captured in section 4 of the statutory document. The provisions of the information and access to services through the council's websites continue to be a significant and cost-effective method of communicating with and providing services for the council's customers. The council's intranet, Daventry, access to information and is useful means of communications for employees and members. Therefore, I'd like to put the recommendation that the proposed ICT strategy for 2018 to 21, as appended in this report, Appendix 1, be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Any questions or comments? So you've got likely where that likely. So are we happy to agree with the recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you. Move on now to housing and environmental health issues, property for temporary accommodation. Councillor Auger.
Thank you, Chair. The purchase of this premise, I'm sure you've read the recommendations with regard to purchasing the 50% share on 55 Ericsson Close, which we do not already own, and then having that property provide temporary accommodation in such a way that it stays within the definition of affordable housing, and also that the income budget for shared ownership be reduced by £2,409 per year. You know, it's always, homelessness is a really difficult and challenging experience for those who suffer it. And there are many reasons why people become homeless. And this is a welcome addition to the two other premises we already own to provide a stable property for them sometimes to regather their lives, and also sometimes they're required there for a season to improve their credibility with regard to then going into social housing. Gives them a bit of a refuge there, so that we can help and support getting them back into either a housing association or other rented accommodation. We all know that there are considerable undesirable effects for the use of bed and breakfast for the homeless, and so where we can, it's important to get families and individuals into these purpose-built premises, these places that are purposely designed for that. It's not going to solve the problem of occasionally having to put people into bed and breakfast. There's some very good reasons why, if something spontaneously happens, that we need to get somebody safe and secure somewhere. And so, of course, we will always rely on bed and breakfast, hopefully in the short term, to deal with some of these emergency homeless cases. It also gives us a chance to assess their situation, to see where they are and how we can best help them. So, hopefully you will welcome this, especially when we lost 48 Jubilee Road. It was no longer considered suitable. I believe there was some sort of community safety issues there, but we're now replenishing it with a new building, and I hope that opportunities in the future will arise where we can purchase more assets or more opportunities to get the homeless away from bed and breakfast and get them into purpose-built premises which are suitable for their needs. I think it's also important to raise, Chair, that we don't have a rough sleeping problem in this town, and where we do have information that comes into this council, I've personally seen senior members, senior officers in this council go out to identify whether that information was correct, and to actually find homeless people, or people sleeping low, to try and support and help them. That's not to say that we should be complacent, and it's not to say that the problem won't occur or reoccur. What it is to say is we don't have a massive rough sleeping problem. What we do have is a temporary accommodation problem for homeless that we are dealing with, and this will help deal with it in a more humane way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve, Councillor. Any comments or questions? Councillor Randall.
Yeah, just one question. Is this the only property on the 50% ownership scheme that we currently have half a share in?
Chairman, there are significant numbers, probably in the order of 50 without going into
Right, well, I just wondered why it was this one, or whether they were all offered, whether they wanted to sell their half. You know, why specifically you chose that one?
Sorry?
Chairman, the shared ownership lease and tenant provision whereby when someone wants to sell, they have to let the council know and give us essentially the first choice to purchase. They want to sell, and that's what's caused the situation to arise.
So that's the first question. The second question, I would dispute the amount of, you obviously don't think there are many rough sleepers. There are rough sleepers. The thing is that you don't always find them because they hide away. A lot of these are vulnerable adults. They are picked up often by the police. Different people in the community have seen them. If I hear of any, I always alert the council to where they've been seen and where they are. But we do have them. The problem that we do have is that we haven't got anywhere really for them to go. I've come across a few. I've phoned the out of hours number to be given a Northampton Borough Council, I think it is, number, and you'll find that their hostels are full, and then the next nearest ones are Wellingborough, I think it is. No transport from here to get to Wellingborough, so I've got no chance of ever getting there. So they are around. A lot of them sleep in cars. There's quite a few of them now. They go into local supermarkets. They have a wash in the morning. The supermarkets, are, you know, if they're not causing any trouble, they quite happily let them in to have their wash. So they are out there. I would actually like to see some sort of hostel a lot closer than Wellingborough.
Councillor Rabbit, we're going to discuss this in the next item, because from the scrutiny report about what we can do to do more.
And at the end of the day, you can only deal on information intelligence. If you have information and intelligence, there are people out there, then you need to share that with the right people. You need to share that with people like me, so that I can be aware of it. I think it's quite easy to actually state these things, when of course the information that we have is to the contrary. And there is the last thing that any of us want here is for any of our residents to be in a sleeping rough situation. Of course we know the situation is difficult out there, we know there's sofa surfing going on, etc, etc, etc. We know that. But at the end of the day, we have processes within this council. I personally would want to know, and I know the officers would want to know, where these people are, so we can go out there and reach out and help them. It's not just good talking about it here, it's about letting me know, so then I can actually ensure that if you're not getting the right response from officers, then I can make sure something is being done, and I would encourage you please to do that. And you know, the way I work, you know that is something that's important to me. So please, if you would do that, and then we can ensure that we get a good intelligence process whereby we can identify where these people are and do our best for them.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, Wendy, so that's a good option.
Yeah, the police are often aware, because I can tweet things and things. So
Well, tweet Richard. Email it. Councillor Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to question the siting of this particular home for temporary accommodation. This part of Ericsson Close, you're talking about small houses that are effectively in closes that are off closes. Go into these areas at any time, there are usually young children and so on playing around and everything else. I would guess that they're the sorts of areas where many of the people who are there already have got difficulties, financial difficulties amongst them. And what they most need, surely, is getting a little bit of stability so that you develop little communities within these closes. It never strikes me as strange that you should want to choose a place like this, well away from the centre, for people who require temporary accommodation. People who require temporary accommodation are very often going to be people who have got other needs as well that need to be catered for. And I just wonder if this is the right place.
Councillor Alden.
Yeah, thank you. Temporary accommodation is that. It's an opportunity for us to assess their situation and give them a certain amount of stability so we can get them where they are best wanted. To be honest with you, I almost think it's almost like, I don't think we're targeting homeless people with regard to the sort of undesirable people to be in the community. So, and if you're not, then it matters not where they are, it's just somewhere safe, temporarily, so that we can assess them, they're in contact with us, we know who they are, to try and find an appropriate place for them. And I personally would commend any further assets to our pool of temporary accommodation premises that we can use to help and support people, wherever they may be, and why not be within communities, all right, whereby we can help and support them as long as we know where they are.
Thank you,
I'm all for having as many houses in as many places available for people who actually require them. I'm just questioning as to whether these these communities are going to be the communities that will be able to give most support to somebody who is requiring temporary accommodation and going through a sort of period of change in their lives. I just feel that if you're going to make a community argument, I can think of Drayton Park or somewhere very close that you can go to.
Okay, I don't want to carry on. Maria, you just...
Just to clarify one of the earlier points, transport, my housing officers teams engages with sleepers. We respond to every inquiry, we go out and seek and find people. People do not always want to engage. Sometimes after we find them secure long-term accommodation, they leave. This happens. This is what happens. I can also clarify that transport is provided to get people to bed and breakfast or temporary accommodation or to some suitable accommodation. Often people who are sleeping work, and they are very small numbers, need specialist support and accommodation.
Thank you, Mr. Maria. Ms. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I think welcome to have Maria's comments there, but the next agenda item is purely about this issue.
I just saw it, I said that already.
I know, but the important thing is Councillor Pritchard did a very good piece of work on this for scrutiny.
Yeah.
So we can give that full consideration. Going back to the Ericsson point specifically, which I think we need to wrap up, because it's only about that property. Simon's already said that opportunity arose, and therefore that's what we need to discuss. And in terms of the communities, I mean, I don't know how to cut this. If you had them scattered about the town, then there'll be, I'm not sure if one community in Ericsson Close is more or less caring for people in another community. What I do suspect, though, is there's perhaps more preconceptions there again, creeping into. It's actually on my ward, of course, that one, and when I door knock there, the worst thing that's ever happened to me there, or the only complaints I've had, is when a dog nearly bit my finger. But apart from that, it's in quite a pleasant place to be, and hopefully people in that situation would be, for the short period of time, quite settled down.
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, bit of history, Chairman. I was housing chairman when Poppy Fields was built, and I very much promoted that scheme. I wanted 200 houses, and in fact I only got 100. I was walking around the housing conference with major developments up in Harrogate, major developers trying to get a house built without land charges for under 30,000. And those houses were built without land charges for less than 35,000 in the end. The only thing that went wrong was there was a big sort of cry in those days that shared ownership would be the thing of the future, the thing to solve people's affordable problems. Well, it clearly wasn't, and it clearly isn't. So it left a lot of people getting on the first ladder of housing, but could never get to the second ladder of housing. If you look back to the temporary accommodation that this council used to have, which was in the centre of the Limes, was a common one in the centre of Daventry, and another one in Weed. Now, temporary accommodation, as has been said, isn't just accommodation for down and out and people with severe problems. It's people with other problems as well. Quite normal people with everyday problems that happen to end up in temporary accommodation. So I happen to think it's an ideal place. There's a balance, Chairman, and I think it's an ideal place for them to use as a temporary accommodation. But a bit of history anyway.
Thanks to you, Councillor Osborne. Can we have a note for the minutes, please? Councillor Augur's offered to actually, anyone who knows of any homeless people, to let him know, because he has a passion on this matter. So all members can have that offer, not just Wendy. So I think that's quite important. I'm very kind, Councillor Augur.
Yeah, that can be by text or by phone. Just give us the details, and we'll make sure something is.
That's good. Thank you for that. What's the minutes in so people know? Councillor Hills.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we should do is to maintain contact with the street plasters. They go out very often late at night, sometimes don't finish till about 3 o'clock in the morning, and they take care of people who perhaps are not capable of getting home on their own or things like that. And they do keep a watch out for homeless people. And when I've been to their meetings, going back not recently, but about 2 years ago, I actually went out one evening with them. And they do, if they see a person who's homeless, try and help them in any way they can. So I think if we can maintain good contact with them as well, they may on occasions then be able to put some information forward.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Hill. Right, we come to recommendations then. There's three there. Are you happy to agree with them?
Agree.
Thank you. Any against? None. Thank you. Carried. No goal. The next paper, Councillor Organ, is the report from the Scrutiny Prison on homelessness and housing and environmental health issues about proposals to try and improve things. Over to you, Councillor Organ.
Thank you. If you look at table 1 there are a number of recommendations laid out. I won't go through them. I'm sure that everybody has read them and is aware of them. But table 1 shows a direction of travel from the sterling work done by, I believe, Councillor Pritchard. And then it shows the direction of travel through scrutiny and improvement for some refinement, and then eventually for proposed recommendations. They are as they are, and I'm happy to take any questions on them. I think this is, again, a really important area for us as councillors to ensure, especially with the sleeping rough, that we are showing compassion to those that are most vulnerable within our community.
Very much indeed, Councillor Organ. Councillor Oswald.
I think this council has got an absolutely brilliant scrutiny committee, unlike the one at County Council. I think it's well run, it searches. The previous chairman was, I say, brilliant. He's not that old boy. And I'm certain, knowing the one that's sitting behind me and his attitude to life, that he will be equally as brilliant.
It must be a
I can't, and they're not paying me any money, and I can't see any reason to doubt any recommendations that they bring to this group. The councillor involved, he's very thorough. I've watched him work, and he knows his subjects and he looks into them. I can't see any reason to criticise or argue against any of the recommendations. In fact, I would fully support everything they say, because they are a brilliant strategy group.
Going to put up the record, Steve. Thank you, Steve.
Well, they are good. I mean, go along there and see it.
Councillor Brown's following on the good work of Councillor Morgan, so that's excellent. Thank you, Steve. He's gone actually, left. But anyway, that's fine. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, on number 5,
Yes.
the task panel recommendation was in safeguarding adults or
Yes.
including multi-agency. I just wondered why that wasn't carried forward, that was all.
Okay. Can you help?
Yeah, Chair. I can speak to this because I was obviously chair of the scrutiny committee at the time this paper was brought forward. I think the reality of the situation was, I mean, he did a very wide-ranging, searching piece of work. I think the point I would note, this took a protracted period of time, in actual fact, from the genesis to the conclusion. And I think the world had moved on, probably is the best way to put it, with various regulations and requirements. And we had an incredibly hearty discussion and debate, well, as you well know, Councillor Randall. And basically, you can see, I think this is really important actually, how it got from the proposals from scrutiny all the way to the group here. And basically, as it goes through that process, which is well documented, things get refined to make them operationally viable and sound and to be tuned in. And I think it's a really important point there actually, because I think when we look at things as the scrutiny committee, perhaps we have a lot of insight, I think, from the work we do, but probably not to every single angle. And I think basically when it goes to that process of operational sense checking, that's how we ended up with the set of recommendations that you've got there.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. So there's 5 recommendations, Councillor Morgan. Are the committee happy to agree with them?
We agree.
Thank you. Any against? No. Thank you. Your third paper, Councillor Organ, is civil penalties and rent repayment order policy.
Thank you. This is a direction of travel for, I suppose, the criminal justice in all areas, to try and make it simple and speedy, and to ensure that fines and sanctions come directly into those that are enforcing the particular genre of enforcement. And here we have, following the Housing and Planning Act of 2016, new robust powers for local authorities to use against poor housing conditions. And also the Act allows the authorities now to use civil penalties as an alternative to prosecution, hence the speedy and simple justice. And also then it stipulates that any income derived from the civil penalties can be retained and used by the council to carry out housing and enforcement functions. So we're looking there for a self-funding investigative and enforcement process as time draws on with regard to receiving these payments. The actual values of punishment are quite high. The maximum civil penalty allowed for the Housing Act offences is set at £30,000. So that's not a small sum. And those monies will be vital for us to then ensure that we are robust in ensuring that people aren't suffering housing conditions that can affect their health, their mental and physical health, and ensuring people are getting a fair deal within our community. So I recommend that we carry and adopt the civil penalties and rental payment order policy for this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a very important one, this, and it's important that road landlords are actually identified and sorted out. Are there any questions? You're happy to set the recommendation? Agreed. Thank you. Any again? No, thank you. That concludes the business. We have one item left on the agenda. That's a presentation for Reach for Health, which I'll have up on the screen for you. You can come forward, or are you going to do? I think it's better to come forward. Hi there. Just see if we find you can talk to the audience. That's fine. We've got slides. Just tell us when you want to move on one at a time. You got something to go out front? Yes. Thank you. You're Rob, aren't you? Rob, is it? That's right. Very nice to see you, Rob. Thank you for coming on tonight. It's Washi as well. Yes, yes. Okay, over to you, sir.
Firstly, could I say thanks for adjusting your attendance?
Yeah, we thought we'd go in first, but I know you want to
I'm here this evening really to talk to you about the future, I hope, of Reach for Health. My name is Rob Hewson. I'm the chair of the trustees, and I have with me my friend and colleague, Washi, who's centre director. Reach for Health is the operating name of Daventry Health Rehabilitation Trust, which is a registered charity. We've operated from the premises we're currently in High March for over 20 years. In 2010, we converted to a charity, which is when Daventry Health Rehabilitation came about. If I can just give you a brief outline of the existing centre. What we do is we help people with health rehabilitation. So people who suffer from illnesses such as this and many others. And at the moment, we are experiencing 2,400 user visits per month. That is a lot of people coming in and out. And that's excluding classes that we run for COPD, Parkinson's, and other things, diabetes, cardio rehab, various other groups that we run there. We take people primarily from the local community, but also from Warwickshire and Leicestershire, and we even have people coming occasionally from Kent, because of the services we offer are so specialist. We have no income from any governmental organisation at all. And if you look at the list, if you look at the list that's there, we've been accredited as a willing provider by the NHS since 2003. We run 2 10-week sessions with a community stroke team each year to help them with stroke patients to rehabilitate them. We have a cardio rehabilitation team that we work for from Northampton General and also from Daventry. We work with a restart team with COPD patients. We receive in excess of 400 NHS referrals each year, which is primarily from GPs and other health professionals. And over 90% of our users actually come now from GP referrals and NHS consultants at the local hospitals. all of these people come with no money. Our sources of income, we charge a small monthly charge to regular users, and that works out at around about £2.30 per visit. And what I'd ask you to bear in mind there is that the majority of these people need one-to-one time whilst they're in the centre, or they need a lot of guidance and people to keep an eye on them while they're there. We have a lot of local fundraising that is done primarily by our staff, by members of the centre, and also by trustees' involvement. That money comes in towards our general running costs because that's free money for us. That's money we can use as we need and wish to use it. For new equipment, we apply for grants, and DEC have been very kind to us this year and given us some money, and we've also had money from people like the Optimists and the Eric Stanton Trust and people like this, and that's enabled us to buy quite a lot of new equipment this year, a lot of it very specialist, which is also very expensive. A single machine could cost as much as £11,000. The benefits that we provide, I won't run through them, they're clearly there, but there's some key figures in there. One of them is force prevention, which obviously is part of what we do. And each unspecified call costs the NHS £2,400. You've got £1.5 million an hour being spent by the NHS on diabetes, and obviously type 2 diabetes, particularly something we're heavily involved in. And we help particularly with the self-care ability within the local community. The problem we have, we currently rent the premises we're in from Daventry District Council, and I would say that's, albeit we think it's too much, but it is at a reduced rate. That lease expires in July 2020. There is no option to renew that lease because of the premises, and they may well be redeveloped. The existing premises are single skin asbestos roof, falling to bits, the roof is leaking, and we're having to make do with what we currently have there. And to be honest, it's getting very tight. We have about 4,500 square feet, and it just isn't enough for the services that we offer. To lease new premises will be £40,000 per annum. That would be the end of Ridge Vale. We cannot afford £40,000 per annum. Obviously, one of my duties as a trustee is to maintain the viability of the charity, and a rent of that size will prevent that happening. So we have to raise sufficient funds to enable us to build a purpose-built centre, ground rent-free site, and offer additional services which we desperately need to offer, but we can't because the existing premises just won't allow us to do so. The additional services that we intend to offer, which I'll go into a little bit more detail later on, will give us an income stream because we can charge commercial rates for what we would do. That would give us tremendous financial stability because we have an income stream that we dearly need. And of course, if we built the centre out of fundraising and on the rent-free site, we would have no rent to pay. We have identified our preferred location, and that is Daventry Sports Trust Ground, a rugby club in Western Avenue. We've had quite a number of discussions with Mervyn Bull, who's the chair there, and he's been very supportive of what we're trying to do. He has spoken to his trustees, and in November, Mervyn gave me the approval unanimously of their trustees in us trying to get onto the site. Obviously, at the end of the day, as we said, it's subject to final agreement and subject to people signing the right pieces of paper. He also gave me the okay that this presentation would be made in effect jointly between Daventry Health Rehabilitation Trust and Daventry Sports Trust. That's the level of verbal support we currently have from Daventry Sports Trust. part of our fundraising target will be to resurface the whole of the car park. Now, if anybody's familiar with the site, the car park is a bit of a nightmare. So we would resurface the whole of that as part of what we're doing in fundraising. And Mervyn has pledged his support in helping raise funds to do that. The preferred location, you can see the entrance off Western Avenue. The rugby club is in front of you, so we're off to the left in the far corner, with some dedicated disabled places immediately in front of our centre, because we do have a lot of people arriving in wheelchairs, and a lot of amputees and that type of thing. So that gives us dedicated space there. There will be further disabled places that will be closer to the actual main car park in front of the rugby club and across to the bowls club. The size of that building is 7,700 square feet. That's a 70% improvement in space on where we are now. That would enable us to do the things that we really need to do. Part of the question that has been raised to me is how are we compatible with Daventry Sports Trust and with the facilities that are on that site. The one thing we are not, and the one thing we never wish to be, is in any way a commercial gym, because that is not our expertise. We don't want people pushing weights in the corner. We don't want young ladies turning up in lycra covered in makeup, because that will make everybody feel uncomfortable that comes to our centre. Our centre, as well as being health rehabilitation, which is exercise-based, is also about the social side and helping people regain self-esteem and be able to talk to each other and sit and have a cup of coffee and just have a chat. And that is extremely important. So we help and do extremely well with the mental and physical rehabilitation and well-being of the people that attend to us. But the skill set of the team would enable us to carry out two things that we'd like to do. One is sports health rehabilitation. Now that in effect is someone that perhaps is getting older and can't play rugby anymore or football anymore and wants to take up a different sport. And what we can help them do is to maintain a level of fitness to enable them to carry on with some form of sport and some form of activity, which Alan Hill said earlier is so important whatever your age, and that is so true. The other side, which we've spoken to local GPs about, is there is demand for sports injury rehabilitation, i.e. people that have had some sort of muscle pull or hamstring pull or whatever it happens to be, that want to get back into playing the sport that they dearly love to play and keep themselves active. That also is within the skill set of the people that we have. We've spoken to GPs and they also would refer those people to us. I mean, we have physiotherapy techniques and everything else at the centre, so all of that can be carried out. And I'm told by Mervyn Ball, that there are in excess of 400 athletes visit that site every week, which I found staggering. It's true. So the next steps. We have to reform the agreement with Daventry Sports Trust. That is primarily down to us, with the help of people like Simon Bowles, who can give us some support in what we're trying to do there, because the land is leased from Daventry District Council. We need a decision on outline planning. Again, with the help of Simon and his team, we put an application in November for outline planning. We still haven't had a decision. I find that remarkable. And although it's being chased every 2 weeks they come up with another question. And we need a decision on that. We have to confirm the cost of completion. At the moment it looks as though it's going to be around £850,000, which sounds a lot of money, but in reality it actually isn't for what we do. We're well on with our financial plan, which we will finish in March, just sometime during about the middle of March. And our major fundraising campaign we will launch during March. We've got to think outside the box with that, because there's no point in us going to people like Dunhill Trust and Tudor Trust or even Daventry District Council, because they won't give us the money. So we have to find smarter ways of doing it, and that strategy is very well developed and very well put together, and you'll find out what it is when we start it. But fundraisers will not pledge any money until such times as we are secure in what we are trying to do. That security can only really come from Daventry District Council and from the strategy group that I'm stood in front of at the moment. What I would ask you to bear in mind is that you are responsible as a district council for the well-being, the health and the social care of the people in the community. Please don't underestimate the enormous contribution that we make to that. It is absolutely huge. What I need from Daventry District Council is help in being able to have a sufficiently secure position to go to our fundraisers in March. And our target is to raise the funds over the course of a year. So we raise the funds every year and we have a year to build. And that's the reason I'm here today.
Thank you indeed. Can I just say that's a very thorough presentation. Can I just ask Maria, do you know where the planning applications are running?
No idea, Chairman, but I can make inquiries and I can ensure to let you know exactly what any hold it may be.
Okay. Are there any questions from members?
Yes, carry on.
Any questions, Maria?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously know where the building is and I've been in there a few times, but it would be an ideal location to be on that site. It would fit in, you know, really well with what they want to do. And I know there's a lot of elderly or, well, not elderly, but rugby players that are still playing and they're well into their sort of mid-50s. And, you know, I'm sure that they would appreciate when they have an injury just to be able to go next door. I think we should do everything possibly we can to make this happen.
I agree. As I said, I went down there actually some time ago, learning about it and everything, and I was very, very impressed with what I saw. The existing premises, which isn't ideal. I was amazed by the commitment of the trustees, people down there, very, very encouraged. I can recommend, but obviously I know you do a good job down there. Thank you. Richard, Councillor Organ.
Oh, sorry, I found it. So you are officially a charity?
Oh, yes.
I'm a busy Councillor Organ, just down there.
So I met recently with the Dementia Cafe, and part of the blessing and the problem of these, one that they're locally driven, which of course you get all that passion and that drive for success, but obviously the curse is actually sustainability. And I was talking to the Dementia Cafe about, because of course they rely upon the county councils. We have a certain amount of funds that we can distribute, but we probably won't have them next year. Please don't. I'm hoping for a miracle. But we're talking about sustainability. You know, once you've got the funding in place to build this premise, can you be self-sufficient, or are you always going to rely on some form of charitable donations? And the question that we asked the Daventry Cafe, can you charge the people that use their facility the monies required to keep their particular enterprise sustainable on their own 2 feet? Anything extra they get, they can do different things. So the business plan going forward, is it to be self-reliant?
Yes, it is.
Oh, right. And then
If you look at it, where we're at the moment is the cost of the general overhead expenses of the organisation are more than the revenue we get in from our radio company. We make up that difference with the local funders. The difference is getting smaller and smaller all the time. In terms of new equipment, we do get grants. We have to fight for a lot of them, and sometimes we have to make machines last a bit longer than they should do before we get a new grant. But we're actually, I won't say we're well off financially, but we're actually better than we've been for a number of years. The advantage of the new centre is, A, we've lost the cost of the rent. That will be replaced because we would need a full-time administrator to run the centre because of all the various things we do. So part of the regular income stream would be the sports health and the sports injury rehabilitation. In addition to that, and I'm sure Wyatt won't mind me mentioning this, we have just received a relatively small grant from Public Health England to begin training junior doctors and specialist nurses in the skills of rehabilitation. Now that is a
precursor, I hope, to a much bigger income. And that also extends beyond the benefits to Reach for Health, because when we start to run 3-day courses, 4-day courses, the junior doctors and specialist nurses, it won't only be from the local hospitals, it'll be from hospitals all over the country. So the hotels will be full because they have to stay in the hotels. And that we can actually start to charge reasonable money for and get reasonable income. And we are incredibly confident that that will work, because we've had long conversations with Public Health England, which, to be honest with you, came about purely and simply because we had a stroke patient that came to us who'd had a major stroke, only a young guy in his 40s, young children. He'd had a major stroke, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't use his hands. And we have done wonders with him. Waj and the team have done miracles with him. The man is now walking. He's coming to some of our speech therapy classes, which we also run with local professional singers, so that people sing to learn how to speak again. And it's an incredible thing. His sister is senior officer in Public Health England. So it was sort of fall on your feet sign, really. And we've gained something out of that. So yeah, we are absolutely confident that we will be incredibly much more self-sufficient in new premises than we are in existing ones.
Of course, Rob, you've been going over 20 years anyway, so it's
We have, yeah.
sustainability.
We converted to a charity in 2010, but I mean, it's been there since 24 years.
Cassie Hills.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Rob, I knew a lot of what you were going to say in your presentation, because having visited fairly recently, I've had the opportunity to see the clientele down there, and also the new equipment that's been purchased. And I have nothing but praise for the way you carry out your enterprise, let's put it that way. I fully support what you're trying to do, and I genuinely believe that we as a council, if we can help in any way, we should. I'm very interested in the sports injuries and the sport development side, because I know that when I go back to the days when I managed Toast to Town and also got involved in some of the physiotherapy there, that people pulled a muscle, they got a hamstring, they went home, they had to take time off work because they couldn't recover from these injuries, and it took longer for them, depending on their age, on their recovery period. I think it would be ideal that if our sports people around the district knew that there was somewhere when they suffered a sports injury that they could go and get treatment from. I think that would be a very good addition to your bow, and I fully support what you do. I know you came to me and said, can we have a presentation? And we managed to get it for you. And I thank you for that, because I think we here don't always get the opportunity to go and visit these places and that, because we're a mixed bunch. But having been down there and seen, I would encourage us as a council to do what we can to support you.
I'm sure you wanted to arrange a visit, the councillors might want to visit there.
I was just about to say, it's no problem if you want to come as a group or you want to come as individuals.
You did that for Island Hills, you did it for Island, and could organise that maybe for our side.
No trouble at all.
Okay, thank you.
If you just let us know how many are coming, we'll give you the best time today to come and see what we're doing, and you're welcome to
leave it with me. I'll go out to members.
And you don't have to do it all at once, you can do it in separate groups, something with.
And then I'll come back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Hill. Thank you. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Rob. Thank you for that presentation. Excellent work that you do. We've spoken many times. I was a bit concerned when I walked across the threshold and you said I can do a lot for you, Colin. However, one thing comes, or two things come to mind. GPs, etc., give you referrals.
Yeah.
So are the NHS in any way incorporated, or do they fund in any way? And the other one is the car park. Are you going to be the sole funder for the car park?
I doubt it. I mean, as I said, to answer your first question, and I said right at the beginning of the presentation, we received no income from the NHS or any other government organisation whatsoever. We are totally self-funded. In terms of the car park, what Mervyn and I have agreed is that the car park will form part of our fundraising campaign, and at the same time, Daventry Sports Trust will be fundraising to contribute towards that car park.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
agreed.
One thing to say about the NHS is you are saving the NHS money.
Absolutely.
Contributing.
I would hesitate to say, well, I won't hesitate to say, we're saving the Daventry District Council a lot of money as well.
The health service particularly, who've got lots
Oh,
of money
huge,
shooting
yeah.
around, floating around.
Yeah.
Well, on the back off, not about the front end, but I'm just saying, you are saving the money.
Yes, we are.
They don't contribute at all. I know we had that discussion before. I know.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So, Councillor Richard, we just try and finish.
Just on that point,
Yeah.
is the fact that you don't get money from the NHS, is that simply a financial fact, or is it a policy?
It's a policy.
On your side?
No, on the NHS.
On the NHS side?
Yeah, the NHS, when we went for the accreditation, to be accredited when we provided to the NHS, which was, when was it?
2003.
2003. It cost us, I think, about £9,000 to obtain it. And at that time, there was a small amount of money came with each referral. Within 12 months?
Within 8 months.
8 months. But us gaining accreditation, they decided they couldn't afford it anymore, so they stopped it. And since that day, we have received not a penny piece from the NHS. Absolutely zero. I mean, one of the ironies is the community stroke team who came to us to help develop a program for men and women who had had strokes. We put a program together which the community stroke team won an award for, which helped finance them to bring people to our centre to get free treatment to rehabilitate the stroke team. So it's a vicious circle, but that's what we're there for,
Yeah.
and that's what if you come to Reach for Health, and please do, the level of compassion in that place is quite amazing. For me, as chair of trustees, it's an incredible honour, and I know all of my colleagues as trustees feel exactly the same. I mean, this booklet, if you look at the label at the back, Orchard Print, Janet Hay, who owns and runs Orchard Print, is one of our newer trustees. She said, I'll print it for you free of charge. Because we can't afford to do that, but we had to get something across to you guys so you can actually see what we're trying to do. And so we have good support, we need help from Daventry District Council to get into a position where we can go out, secure, and raise the funds that we need to build a new building. I have no doubts that we will raise that money. I can't have, but I don't have. We will raise that money one way or another, and we will raise it by summer next year.
Firstly, needs a planning permission.
We need a plan.
No, that's a separate.
I won't go into detail, but Simon knows a couple of
That's a
other
separate
things,
committee,
but
then.
that's what we've already agreed with.
Yeah, that won't be decided here, that's a separate committee. Also.
Of course, yes.
I was going to say to you, Rob, thank you much indeed for that. And can I just say, I do encourage members of the centre to go for Alan, and we can do a note to all councils in Alan, so everyone has. If there's any more booklets, we can put those members in the holes who aren't here.
Okay.
So that some members can actually have a look. And then I just want to thank you, Waj, and Lynn for turning up tonight, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you very
Could
much.
I just ask Rob a question? Rob,
Of course.
on visiting the centre, have you got a maximum number of, would you like groups of what? About 5 at a time?
I'd say five.
Okay, yeah, I'll look into that.
How many groups of 5 you've got is absolutely fine.
I'll come back to you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you.